The smoke billowed across the barren landscape of Arrakis 9, obscuring the crimson sun that had once made this desert planet glow like a jewel against the black canvas of space. Captain Jasper Hayes adjusted his combat helmet, wiping sweat from his brow, as he surveyed the aftermath of what Command called a successful tactical strike. Success looked a lot like failure from where he stood, charred vegetation crumbling stone structures, and the acrid smell of burnt biomatter that his medical training told him wasn't just plant life. Hayes' command wants all medical units to fall back. Extraction in 30 minutes. Lieutenant Mercer's voice crackled through his comms unit. Sylvari reinforcements incoming. This place is about to become even more of a hellhole. Jasper acknowledged the order, but didn't immediately move. His scanner was picking up an anomalous heat signature beneath a collapsed structure about 50 meters ahead. The signature was too small to be an adult Sylvari warrior, and its pattern was erratic signs of severe distress or injury. "Sir, I'm detecting a potential non-combatant casualty," Jasper reported. "Request permission to investigate before extraction." There was a pause, and then Mercer's gruff voice returned. "Negative, Hayes. Intel confirms the settlement was military only. Any signatures are enemy combatants. Return to extraction point immediately." Jasper, hesitated eyes, fixed on the scanner. The heat signature was fading, pulsing in a rhythm he recognized all too well from his years in trauma care, a child's heartbeat growing weaker by the second. "Copy that," he said finally, but his feet were already moving toward the ruins. The Human Alliance had been at war with the Sylvari Conclave for nearly 3 years now. What had begun as territorial disputes over mining rights had escalated into full-scale interstellar conflict when Blackwood Industries, the military contractor supplying both sides, reported a Sylvari attack on a human research outpost. Since then, the casualty reports grew longer each week, and the propaganda more vitriolic. Sylvari were portrayed as bloodthirsty aliens intent on exterminating humanity, while humans were depicted as destructive parasites by Sylvari media. Jasper had never bought into the rhetoric. As a combat medic, he'd sworn an oath to preserve life, long before he'd enlisted. The combat training and the uniform were means to an end, allowing him to reach those who needed help most desperately. The scanner led him to a partially collapsed dwelling. The architecture was distinctly Sylvari organic curves of living material, intertwined with crystalline structures that would normally glow with bioluminescence. Now, they were dark, many shattered. Jasper activated his exo-strength assists and began carefully lifting debris following the weakening signal until he uncovered a small form. What he found made his breath catch. A Sylvari child, no more than the equivalent of a human 6-year-old, lay unconscious beneath a protective arch of collapsed material. The child's silvery skin was marred with injuries, the normally luminescent patterns along her arms and face flickering weakly. Around her neck hung an elaborate pendant that marked her as someone of importance. Training took over as Jasper scanned for injuries. Internal bleeding, respiratory distress, neural pathway disruption, all critical, all treatable if he acted quickly. The Sylvari physiology was different from human, but similar enough that his medical knowledge could be adapted. "Hayes, what's your position?" Mercer barked through the comms. Jasper made his decision. "Found a wounded civilian, sir. A child. Administering emergency care and bringing them to extraction." "Are you out of your mind? That's a Sylvari direct violation of engagement protocols." "It's a child, sir. Non-combatant under Convention 3. Mercer's voice dropped dangerously. "This comes from Command Hayes. No Sylvari are to be evacuated or treated. That's a direct order." Jasper carefully lifted the child, administering a stabilizing injection. "Then I guess I'm disobeying a direct order, sir." He cut the communication and activated his tactical visor, plotting the fastest route to the extraction point. The odds weren't good, a half-kilometer dash through active battlefield, carrying wounded with hostiles inbound. But Jasper had beaten worse odds in his 12 years of service. As he emerged from the ruins, the ground shook with distant explosions. The Silvari counterattack had begun earlier than expected. Their ships streaked across the sky like silver needles descending toward the human forward positions. Jasper ran the child cradled against his chest, his medical exoframe giving him the strength and speed he needed. "Hayes, what the hell?" Corporal Jenkins called out as Jasper sprinted past his position. "Is that—" "Cover me!" Jasper shouted. "Wounded non-combatant!" To his credit, Jenkins didn't hesitate. His heavy pulse rifle came up providing suppressing fire as Jasper continued his dash toward the waiting evacuation ships. More soldiers reacted as he passed, some confused, some hostile, but enough provided cover that he made it to the perimeter. At the evacuation point, chaos reigned. Wounded were being loaded onto ships as artillery pounded the landscape. Captain Herrick, the evacuation coordinator, spotted him immediately. Hayes. What in blazes do you think you're doing?" Herrick's face contorted with rage when he saw the Silvari child. "Turn around and leave that thing where you found it." Jasper didn't slow down. "Sir, this is a critically wounded juvenile. The conventions are clear." "I don't give a damn about the conventions. No Silvari on my ships." Jasper stepped closer, voice dropping. "Sir, this isn't just any child. Look at the pendant, royal markings. This could be a diplomatic opportunity." Herrick's eyes narrowed on the intricate pendant, recognition dawning. The possibility of a high-value asset or hostage was enough to make him reconsider. After a tense moment, he nodded curtly. "Fine. Last ship Bay 3. But this is on your head, Hayes. Military tribunal if this goes south." Jasper didn't wait for more. He sprinted to the designated shuttle amid stares and muttered curses from the other soldiers. As he secured the child in a medical berth and hooked up emergency life support systems, the shuttle doors sealed with a hiss. The engines roared to life and the craft lurched skyward, barely escaping a barrage of Silvari energy weapons. "What's the meaning of this?" The shuttle's medical officer, Dr. Eliza Warren, approached with a scowl that quickly transformed to shock. "That's a Silvari." "Critical condition," Jasper replied, already adjusting the life support parameters. "Multiple internal injuries, neural damage, respiratory failure." Warren hesitated only briefly before her medical training took over. "Our equipment isn't calibrated for Silvari physiology." "I'll make the adjustments," Jasper said. "I've treated Silvari before in the early days of the conflict." Together, they worked to stabilize the child as the shuttle rocketed toward the stratosphere. Through the viewport, Jasper could see the battle raging below, flashes of human artillery and the answering glow of Silvari energy weapons. The conflict was escalating. A sudden impact rocked the shuttle, sending instruments flying. Warning alarms blared throughout the cabin. "Direct hit on the port engine," the pilot shouted. "We're losing altitude." "Can you reach orbit?" Herrick demanded from the command seat. "Negative, sir. Best I can do is controlled crash landing. Brace for impact." Jasper threw himself over the Silvari child, securing the medical equipment. The shuttle careened through the atmosphere, its remaining engines straining to slow their descent. With a bone-jarring impact, they hit the desert surface, skidding several hundred meters before coming to rest in a cloud of dust and debris. The cabin was silent for several seconds before emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a red glow. Jasper lifted himself, checking the child first, still stable, though the impact had disrupted some of his hasty repairs. Around him, the other passengers were moving, assessing injuries. "Status report," Herrick called out. 5 minor injuries, Warren responded. "Ship's beyond repair, sir." "Communications?" The pilot worked his console. "Short range only. Can't reach orbit with this." Herrick turned to Jasper, fury in his eyes. "This is what comes of your humanitarian impulses, Hayes. Stranded in hostile territory with a damn Silvari." Jasper ignored him, continuing to work on the child. "We need to establish a secure perimeter and send out a distress signal. Alliance forces will be looking for us." "So will the Silvari," Jenkins noted grimly, checking his weapon. "And they'll be a lot more motivated now." The implication wasn't lost on anyone. If the Sylvari discovered one of their children, apparently one of importance in human hands, their response would be merciless. Hours passed as they established a defensive position around the crashed shuttle. The desert night brought plummeting temperatures, and fuel had to be conserved for the life support systems keeping the Sylvari child alive. Jasper remained by her side, making adjustments, administering treatments from their limited supplies. "Why risk everything for one of them?" Warren asked quietly, as she handed him a ration pack. Jasper glanced up at her. "Same reason you became a doctor, I'd guess. To help people who need it." "They're not people, Hayes, they're Sylvari. Bleeding the same as us, aren't they? Trying to protect their homes, their families. Just like us." He gestured to the child. "This one hasn't chosen any sides in this war." Warren didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue further. Around midnight, the child stirred luminescent eyes, fluttering open silver irises with hints of blue that seemed to glow in the dim light of the medical bay. She recoiled in terror at the sight of Jasper, a high-pitched sound escaping her lips. "It's okay," he said softly, raising his hands in a universal gesture of peace. "I'm a doctor. I'm trying to help you." The translator in his collar rendered his words into the clicking musical language of the Sylvari. The child's eyes widened, but the terror didn't diminish. "What's your name?" he tried again. After a moment's hesitation, she responded in a whisper that his translator converted Kira. "Kira, that's a beautiful name. I'm Jasper. You were hurt, but you're safe now." Her small hand went to the pendant around her neck, clutching it tightly. "Mother," she said. "I want my mother." Before Jasper could respond, alarms blared throughout the shuttle. Herrick's voice came over the intercom. Multiple contacts approaching from the north battle stations. Jasper sealed the medical bay and armed himself, though he had no intention of leaving Kira undefended. Through the viewport, he could see them, a squadron of Sylvari warriors, their armor gleaming in the moonlight, led by a tall figure whose elaborate battle regalia marked her as someone of extreme importance. "Hold your fire!" Jasper shouted into his comm. "They're here for the child." "All the more reason to use her as leverage," Herrick responded. "We need bargaining chips to get out of here alive." "That will only escalate the situation," Jasper argued, but he could already hear the charging of weapon systems. The Sylvari forces halted just beyond weapons range. The leader raised her hand, and an amplified voice echoed across the desert, translated by their systems. "I am Princess Valixia of the Sylvari Conclave. You have taken my daughter. Return her, and your deaths will be quick." A chill ran through Jasper. The royal pendant, the child's importance, it all made sense now. Kira wasn't just any Sylvari child. She was the daughter of one of their most powerful leaders, a princess whose hatred of humans was legendary after the death of her consort in one of the early battles of the war. "Sir, we need to de-escalate," Jasper insisted over the comm. "Let me talk to her." "Absolutely not," Herrick replied. "Prepare to fire on my command." Jasper made his decision in an instant. He disabled his comm unit and moved to the shuttle's hatch, keying in the emergency override. "Hayes, what are you doing?" Warren asked, alarmed. "Preventing a massacre," he replied as the hatch hissed open. With slow, deliberate movements, Jasper stepped out into the cold, desert night, his hands raised above his head. He could feel the targeting systems of dozens of Sylvari weapons locking onto him, but he kept walking, stopping halfway between the shuttle and the Sylvari forces. "Princess Valixia," he called out, his translator converting his words. "My name is Jasper Hayes, combat medic with the Human Alliance. I found your daughter in the ruins of the settlement after our attack. She was critically injured. I brought her aboard our evacuation shuttle to treat her wounds." The princess stepped forward, her tall, slender form radiating both power and barely contained fury. Up close, Jasper could see her features clearly, the same silvery skin as Kira's, but marked with luminescent patterns that pulsed with emotion. Her eyes, a piercing silver that seemed to look through him. "You expect me to believe a human would risk himself for a Sylvari child?" Her voice was melodic, even when filled with contempt. "I'm a doctor first, soldier second," Jasper replied. "Your daughter needed medical attention. I provided it." "Where is she now?" In our shuttle's medical bay stable, but still in need of care. I had to perform emergency procedures to save her life. Princess Velixia's expression didn't soften, but something flickered in her eyes, a momentary uncertainty. If this is a deception— It's not, Jasper interrupted. I'll take you to her, just you unarmed. I give you my word she won't be harmed. A cold smile touched Velixia's lips. Your word. The word of a human means nothing to me. Your kind murdered my consort, burned our sacred forests, slaughtered our people. And your people have killed many of mine, Jasper replied evenly. But Kira is innocent in all of this. Please let me show you she's safe. For a long moment, Velixia studied him, her silver eyes unreadable. Finally, she nodded once. If you are lying, I will personally ensure your death lasts for days. Jasper didn't doubt her. This way. He led her toward the shuttle, aware of the weapons still pointed at him from both sides. Herrick's voice crackled over the external comms. Hayes, you are committing treason. Stand down immediately. Jasper ignored him, continuing toward the shuttle with Princess Velixia, following warily behind. As they reached the hatch, he turned to her. She was frightened when she woke. Seeing you will help. Inside the medical bay, Kira lay where Jasper had left her, small and vulnerable amid the human medical equipment. When she saw her mother, her face lit up literally, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin brightening with joy. Mother! She cried out in the musical Silvari language. Velixia rushed forward, gathering her daughter in her arms, with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with her warrior demeanor. She spoke softly in their language words. Jasper's translator didn't fully capture terms of endearment reassurances. After a moment, she looked up at Jasper, confusion and suspicion warring in her expression. Why would you risk yourself for her? Because it was the right thing to do, Jasper said simply. She's a child who needed help. The medications you've administered, Velixia said, examining the IVs and monitors. These are human medicines. Adapted for Silvari physiology. They're helping stabilize her, but she needs proper Silvari medical treatment. Jasper hesitated before adding, her neural pathways were damaged. I've done what I can, but without specialized care. He didn't need to finish. Velixia understood the implications. Her daughter's life was still in danger. You tell the truth about her condition, she acknowledged reluctantly. But Kira cannot be moved far in this state. The nearest Silvari medical facility is beyond the Crimson Ridge, over 300 kilometers away. Our shuttle is damaged beyond repair, Jasper informed her. But we have medical supplies. I can continue to adapt. If you know of a safer location nearby— An explosion outside cut him off. Both rushed to the viewport to see human and Silvari forces exchanging fire. Herrick had apparently decided to take matters into his own hands. We need to get her out of here, Jasper said urgently. This shuttle will become a target for both sides. Velixia's eyes hardened. There is an oasis 30 kilometers east within the Whispering Canyons. It contains healing plants essential for Silvari medicine. If we can reach it. Then we go, Jasper said, already gathering essential medical supplies. Velixia's tone was incredulous. You believe I would allow you to accompany us? Kira needs continuous medical care during transport. I'm the one who's been treating her, who knows what she's been given. He met Velixia's gaze steadily. I'm coming with you, or she might not survive the journey. Another explosion rocked the shuttle. There was no time for debate. With visible reluctance, Velixia nodded. If you betray us, if you harm her in any way— I won't, Jasper promised. Now let's move. While Velixia returned briefly to her forces to issue commands, Jasper prepared Kira for transport, creating a makeshift travois that could be pulled across the desert. He collected as many supplies as he could carry, including emergency rations and water purifiers. You're really doing this? Warren asked, helping him despite her obvious disapproval. No choice, Jasper replied. Herrick's turned this into a firefight. The shuttle's not safe for her anymore. Warren handed him extra medical supplies. You're committing career suicide at minimum, Hayes. Court-martial at worst. Better than having a child's death on my conscience. He hesitated, then added, "Tell them I was taken hostage. It might make things easier for everyone else." She nodded grimly. "Good luck. You're going to need it." Minutes later, under cover of the ongoing skirmish, Jasper slipped away from the shuttle with Kira secured on the travois and Velixia leading the way. 2 Silvari warriors accompanied them as escorts before breaking off to rejoin the main force, leaving the unlikely trio to make their way across the desert toward the distant canyons. They traveled through the night, taking advantage of the cooler temperatures. Velixia moved with the natural grace of her species, her steps barely disturbing the sand. Jasper struggled more with the uneven terrain, but his exoframe helped bear the weight of their supplies and the travois. Every hour he stopped to check Kira's condition and administer necessary treatments. The child drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes murmuring in her native tongue, sometimes lying unnervingly still. Dawn was breaking when they reached the first of the canyon's towering walls of rust-red stone that provided welcome shade from the rising sun. Velixia led them deeper into the maze-like formations, obviously following a path known to her people. "How much farther to this oasis?" Jasper asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "We will reach it by midday," Velixia replied without looking back. "If you cannot keep pace, human, I will take my daughter and continue alone." "I'm fine," he assured her, though his muscles screamed with fatigue. "But Kira needs water soon. Her fluid levels are dropping." This made Velixia pause and look back at her daughter. Concern flashed across her features. "There is a small spring 2 kilometers ahead. We can rest there briefly." The spring turned out to be little more than a trickle of water seeping from the canyon wall, but it was clear and cool. As Jasper tended to Kira, Velixia gathered the precious drops in a crystalline vessel. She brought it to her daughter first, then surprisingly offered some to Jasper. "You need strength to continue," she said, by way of explanation. "Your collapse would endanger my daughter." Jasper accepted with a nod of thanks. As he drank, he studied Velixia more carefully. The hatred and suspicion were still there in her bearing, but so was an exhaustion that went beyond physical fatigue, the weariness of someone who had carried a burden of grief and responsibility for too long. "The pendant Kira wears," he said cautiously. "It bears the same markings as your armor, family insignia." Velixia stiffened, but after a moment replied, "It was my mother's passed to me when I took the throne, and given to Kira upon her birth ceremony. It contains memories, history of our line." "It's beautiful craftsmanship," Jasper said. "The Silvari are renowned for their artistry throughout the galaxy." "Were," Velixia corrected bitterly, "before your kind destroyed our greatest cities and burned our libraries. Much has been lost that can never be recovered." "Not all humans support this war," Jasper told her. "Many of us question the official narratives, the sudden escalations." "Words," she dismissed. "While your weapons still fire upon my people, words mean nothing." They lapsed into silence as they continued their journey. The canyons grew narrower, the air hotter and more oppressive. Kira's condition remained stable, but precarious, requiring Jasper's constant attention. Midday found them approaching the oasis, a hidden valley, nestled between towering cliffs. To Jasper's amazement, it was lush with vegetation, unlike anything he'd seen before. Plants with crystal-like structures grew alongside more recognizable desert flora, and at the center lay a pool of water that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. "The waters of remembrance," Velixia said, her voice softening with reverence. "One of the few sacred places of my people that your military has not yet discovered and destroyed." She led them to a sheltered alcove, formed by the roots of an enormous tree-like organism. Its branches stretched upward, covered in translucent leaves that filtered the harsh sunlight into a gentle, healing glow. "Set her down here," Velixia instructed. "I must gather the healing plants." While she moved among the unusual vegetation, selecting specific specimens with careful precision, Jasper made Kira as comfortable as possible. The atmosphere of the oasis seemed to have a positive effect. Her breathing eased, and the luminescent patterns on her skin pulsed more regularly. Valixia returned with an assortment of crystal-like growths and fibrous plants. With practiced movements, she began preparing them, grinding some into a paste, steeping others in water from the pool. "These are called lumina crystals," she explained as she worked. "They grow only in places where the essence of our ancestors dwells. Their properties accelerate Silveri healing, particularly for neural pathways." Jasper watched, fascinated by the process. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the preparations. After a moment's hesitation, Valixia allowed him to examine them. "Your medicines kept her alive," she acknowledged, "but these will heal her fully." Together, they administered the Silveri remedies, integrating them with the human medical treatments Jasper had been providing. It was a delicate balance requiring both his technical knowledge and her cultural wisdom. As they worked, Jasper became aware of structures partially hidden among the vegetation, ancient ruins of some kind, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings, similar to those on Valixia's armor and Kira's pendant. "This place is more than just an oasis," he observed. "It's a historical site." Valixia's expression grew guarded. "It is one of our memory temples. The first settlers of this world built it 10,000 years ago, long before humans ever ventured beyond their home system." The implication was clear. The Silvari had legitimate historical claim to Arrakis 9, contrary to the Human Alliance propaganda that portrayed them as recent invaders. "I didn't know," Jasper admitted. "Our briefing said this planet was uninhabited until recently." "Many lies have been told to justify this war," Valixia said, her voice hardening again. "My people lived in harmony with this world for millennia. Then Blackwood Industries discovered rare minerals in the canyons, and suddenly human colonists arrived, claiming empty land that was never empty." Before Jasper could respond, a distant rumbling shook the ground. Both of them tensed, looking to the canyon entrance. "Aircraft," Jasper said, recognizing the sound. "Military engines. Could be either side searching for us." Valixia moved swiftly, covering the alcove with camouflaging foliage. "We cannot be discovered here. This place must remain secret." As the sound grew louder, Jasper helped conceal their position. "If they're using thermal scanning, this vegetation won't hide us." "The waters of the pool disrupt such technology," Valixia informed him. "Another reason we built our temples here." They waited in tense silence as the aircraft passed overhead. Through gaps in the canopy, Jasper caught glimpses of the vessel, a Blackwood Industries scout ship smaller than military transports, but heavily armed. It circled the area twice before continuing onward. "They're looking for us," Jasper said unnecessarily. "Both sides will be. You're too valuable to the Silveri, and I'm—" He trailed off, realizing his situation. "A traitor to your kind," Valixia finished for him, "for helping a Silveri child." Jasper didn't dispute the assessment. "Worth it," he said, simply checking on Kira again. The Silveri remedies were working remarkably. Her color had improved, and the diagnostic scanner showed her neural pathways beginning to repair themselves. As night fell, the oasis transformed. The crystal-like plants began to glow with soft bioluminescence, creating a magical landscape of light and shadow. Even Valixia seemed affected by the beauty, her stern features softening as she gazed at the ancient temple structures. "When I was a child," she said unexpectedly, "my father would bring me to places like this. He taught me the history of our people, how we spread among the stars, always seeking harmony with the worlds we settled." Jasper remained silent, sensing she needed to speak these memories aloud. When the human ships first appeared in our system, he counseled patience and diplomacy. Even after the first conflicts, he believed peace was possible. Her voice grew bitter. "His reward was to watch our sacred forest burn when your corporations decided our land was too valuable to share." "I'm sorry," Jasper said quietly, "truly." Valixia studied him in the ghostly light. "You are not what I expected of a human soldier." Probably because I'm a doctor who happens to wear a uniform, he replied with a faint smile. Never been much good at the soldiering part. Kira stirred, then her eyes fluttering open. She looked around in confusion before focusing on her mother. They spoke rapidly in their native language, Kira's small hands gesturing animatedly, despite her weakness. After a moment, Velixia turned to Jasper. She asks why you helped her. I find I cannot answer adequately. Jasper moved closer, sitting where Kira could see him. Because you needed help, he told her directly. And that's what doctors do. Kira's silver eyes regarded him with childlike directness. Mother says all humans hate Sylvari. And I was taught all Sylvari hate humans, Jasper countered gently. Yet here we are. The child considered this her head, tilting in a gesture eerily similar to her mother's. Are there many humans like you? More than either side wants to admit, I think, Jasper told her. People who question this war, who wonder who really benefits from our people fighting each other. Velixia's expression sharpened at this. You speak of Blackwood Industries, the weapons makers. Jasper nodded. They supply both sides of this conflict. Every battle means more profit for them. Some of us have noticed how conveniently escalations occur whenever peace talks are proposed. The attack that killed my consort, Velixia, said slowly. It came the day after he had made a controversial proposal for diplomatic negotiations. And the Sylvari attack on our research station that sparked the war, Jasper asked. Did your leadership actually order it? Velixia's brow furrowed. Our military denied involvement. The High Council believed it was a false flag operation, but by then your fleet was already mobilizing. They looked at each other, the implications hanging in the air between them. Kira, sensing the tension, reached out to touch her mother's arm in a gesture of comfort. We should rest, Jasper said finally. Kira needs sleep to heal, and we'll need our strength if we're going to evade patrols tomorrow. Velixia nodded agreement, but her expression remained troubled as she settled beside her daughter. Jasper took the first watch, positioning himself at the edge of the alcove, where he could observe the oasis without being seen. Hours later, Velixia joined him, her silver eyes luminous in the darkness. You should sleep, I will watch. Jasper nodded gratefully, but before he could move, she spoke again. If what you suggest is true, if this war has been manufactured, then millions have died for nothing more than corporate profit. Yes, Jasper said simply. My people, she continued, we are not warriors by nature. Before this conflict, I had never taken a life. Now I am known as the Deathbringer among your kind, have sworn to eradicate humanity from our worlds. War changes us all, Jasper acknowledged. Makes us into people we never thought we'd become. She was silent for a long moment. What would you do, human doctor, if you had proof of such manipulation? If you could show both sides they had been deceived? I'd make sure everyone knew, he answered without hesitation. Every soldier, every civilian on both sides. Truth is the only weapon that could end this. Velixia's gaze remained fixed on the glowing landscape. Then tomorrow we will seek such proof. The temple archives may contain records of the early days of the conflict, before communications between our peoples were severed. It was as close to trust as she had shown him, and Jasper recognized the significance of the gesture. Thank you, he said quietly, for being willing to consider the possibility. She didn't respond directly. Sleep now. Dawn comes quickly in the canyons. Jasper woke to the sound of Kira's laughter, a musical chiming sound, unlike any human child's. Opening his eyes, he found her sitting up watching with fascination as her mother manipulated small, crystalline objects that hovered and danced in the air between them. It was a side of the fierce warrior princess he hadn't imagined existed. Noticing he was awake, Velixia closed her hand, and the crystals fell still. Her expression immediately reverted to its usual guardedness. Kira's neural pathways have stabilized, she informed him. Your medications combined with our remedies have accelerated her healing beyond expectations. Jasper moved to examine the child, pleased with her improvement. That's excellent news. She's responding better than I hoped. Kira smiled at him, showing no trace of her earlier fear. "Mother says you carried me through a battlefield," she said, through the translator. "Even though your leaders said not to." Something like that, Jasper acknowledged, uncomfortable with being cast as a hero. After ensuring Kira was comfortable and well hydrated, they turned their attention to the temple ruins. Velixia led them deeper into the structure, past ancient columns and walls covered in the crystalline writing of her people. "These temples served as data repositories," she explained, as they entered a central chamber. "Our ancestors recorded all significant events, diplomatic contacts, astronomical observations." At the center stood a crystalline structure similar to the pendant Kira wore, but much larger, a geometric shape composed of countless facets that seemed to shift and change as they moved around it. "A memory crystal," Velixia said with reverence. "They contain not just information but experiences, sensory impressions, emotions of the recorder." "How do you access it?" Jasper asked, fascinated. In answer, Velixia removed her gauntlets and placed her hands directly on the crystal's surface. The structure immediately illuminated from within, projecting images into the air around them, star charts, faces of Sylvari from various eras, landscapes of worlds Jasper didn't recognize. "I'm searching for records from the beginning of the conflict," she explained, her eyes half closed in concentration. "The truth of first contact." The images shifted rapidly, centuries of history flowing by, until they focused on more recent events. Jasper recognized human ships, diplomatic meetings, the earliest settlements on Arrakis 9. The expressions of the Sylvari in these projections showed caution, but not hostility. Then came images that made Velixia's breath catch, the first confrontations, protests over mining operations, then violence. But what caught Jasper's attention was something in the background of several projections: Blackwood Industries logos on equipment used by both sides, and more disturbingly, identical weapon designs being employed against each other. "Wait," he said, pointing to one image. "Can you focus on that meeting?" Velixia directed her concentration to the projection. He indicated a gathering of Sylvari leaders and human corporate representatives. The date stamp indicated it was 3 weeks before the outbreak of full-scale war. "That's Victor Blackwood himself," Jasper said, recognizing the CEO of the massive conglomerate. "And he's meeting with your leadership, offering weapons for defense only, according to this transcript." "The same week," Velixia said slowly, "similar representatives met with your military leadership, claiming our people were building up arms." They watched in growing horror as the crystal revealed more manipulated communications, sabotaged peace initiatives, and finally damning evidence of Blackwood operatives disguised as Sylvari during the attack on the human research station that had sparked the war. "They created this conflict," Velixia whispered, her luminescent patterns pulsing with anger. "Orchestrated every escalation. And made trillions, supplying both sides with increasingly destructive weapons," Jasper added grimly. "Classic war profiteering, but on an interstellar scale. We need to capture this data." Velixia decided, removing a small crystal from her armor. She pressed it against the larger structure, initiating a transfer. "Once my people see this..." A distant explosion interrupted her, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons fire. Both tensed, looking toward the entrance. "They've found the oasis," Jasper said. "But which side?" They hurried to the entrance of the temple, keeping to cover. Through the foliage they could see human troops advancing through the canyon, exchanging fire with a small group of Sylvari defenders who were clearly outmatched. A Blackwood Special Operations team, Jasper identified, recognizing their distinctive armor. Not regular Alliance forces. "They must have tracked us," Velixia said, her hand moving to her weapon. "Or perhaps they always knew of this place and were waiting for the right moment to strike." Before Jasper could respond, a smaller explosion rocked the temple behind them. They turned to see dust and debris settling, and several armed figures advancing from a hidden entrance at the rear. "Another team," Jasper realized. "We're surrounded." They retreated to where Kira was hidden, finding her awake and frightened by the commotion. Velixia gathered her daughter close, her expression hardening into the warrior princess that human forces had learned to fear. "We need to get this data out," she said, indicating the small crystal now containing the evidence. "It must reach both our peoples." Jasper assessed their options quickly. "Is there another way out of the temple, a hidden passage?" "Yes, through the waters themselves. An underwater tunnel leads to a cave system that emerges 5 kilometers east." Her eyes met his. But Kira cannot make such a journey in her condition. The sound of fighting drew closer. They had minutes at most. "Take the data," Jasper decided. "Get it to your people. I'll stay with Kira, keep her hidden until you can return with help." Valixia's expression showed surprise, then suspicion. "You would remain as my daughter's protector against your own kind?" "Against Blackwood's mercenaries," Jasper corrected, "who are as much my enemy as yours now that we know the truth." A tense moment passed between them. Then, to Jasper's shock, Valixia removed her pendant and placed it around his neck alongside Kira's. "This marks you as under royal protection," she explained. "If Sylvari forces find you first, it may stay their hand long enough for you to explain." The gesture's significance wasn't lost on him. "I'll protect her with my life," he promised. Valixia knelt before her daughter, speaking urgently in their native tongue. Kira's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded bravely. Then, with a last measured look at Jasper, Valixia retrieved the data crystal and moved swiftly toward the central pool. At its edge, she turned back. "If I do not return by nightfall, take the eastern passage. 3 days' journey will bring you to a Sylvari outpost at the edge of the Crimson Ridge. Show them the pendant, and tell them—" She hesitated. "Tell them Princess Valixia sent you to bring peace." With that, she dove into the glowing waters and disappeared from sight. Jasper wasted no time. Gathering Kira in his arms, he retreated deeper into the temple complex, seeking defensible position. The child clung to him, her small form trembling. "Your mother will succeed," he told her with more confidence than he felt. "She's very brave." "So are you," Kira replied softly. "For a human." They found refuge in a small chamber, partially collapsed from some ancient earthquake. The rubble provided both cover and a single defensible entrance. Jasper set Kira down in the safest corner and checked his weapon, a standard-issue sidearm, with barely half a charge remaining. "Will they kill us if they find us?" Kira asked, her silver eyes wide with fear. Jasper considered sugarcoating the truth, but something in her gaze told him she deserved honesty. "They might try, but I won't let them." The sounds of combat had shifted, suggesting the Blackwood forces were moving methodically through the temple complex, searching each chamber. Jasper positioned himself at the entrance, prepared to defend their position for as long as possible. Hours passed in tense waiting. Twice, search teams passed near their hiding place, but didn't discover the partially concealed entrance. Jasper used the time to check Kira's condition and administer another round of medications. Despite the stress, her healing was progressing well. As the light filtering into the temple began to fade, indicating sunset, Jasper faced a difficult decision. Wait longer for Valixia, or attempt the eastern passage while they still had enough daylight to get started. The decision was made for him when an explosion rocked their hiding place, collapsing part of the ceiling. Dust filled the chamber as Jasper threw himself over Kira, shielding her from falling debris. Pain lanced through his shoulder as a heavy stone struck him. When the dust cleared, Jasper found their exit partially blocked. Worse, the commotion had attracted attention. He could hear voices approaching, speaking in the clipped tones of Blackwood's mercenaries. "Kira," he whispered urgently, "we need to move. Can you climb through that space?" He pointed to a narrow opening where the collapsed rubble formed a small tunnel. The child nodded bravely, her luminescent patterns dimming to make her less visible. She slipped through the opening with the natural agility of her species. Jasper followed with more difficulty, his injured shoulder screaming in protest as he forced himself through the tight space. They emerged into a different section of the temple, just as armed figures entered the chamber they'd vacated. Without pausing, Jasper lifted Kira and ran, navigating the ancient corridors by instinct more than knowledge. A shout behind them indicated they'd been spotted. Weapons fire erupted, energy bolts sizzling past them to impact the stone walls. Jasper ducked into a side passage, then another, trying to lose their pursuers in the labyrinthine structure. They rounded a corner and found themselves in the central chamber again, the pool glowing eerily in the fading light. To Jasper's dismay, Blackwood forces were positioned around it, obviously aware of the underwater escape route. He retreated quickly, but not before one of the mercenaries spotted them. "Over there, the medic and the Silvari brat." More weapons fire forced them to flee deeper into the temple. Jasper's mind raced, trying to recall Velixia's directions. The eastern passage, but how to reach it with their pursuers so close behind? As they turned down another corridor, Jasper nearly collided with a figure emerging from an alcove. His heart leaped to his throat before he recognized the luminescent patterns Velixia had returned. "This way," she hissed, pulling them into the hidden passage. "Reinforcements are coming, but we must reach the eastern caverns." "Blackwood's forces control the central chamber," Jasper informed her, as they hurried through narrow corridors. "Did you transmit the data?" "Yes," she confirmed grimly. "Both to my people and to select human channels outside Blackwood's control. The truth is spreading as we speak." They emerged into a larger chamber, dominated by a massive stone door, covered in ancient Silvari script. Velixia placed her hand on a specific pattern, and the door began to slide open with a grinding of stone on stone. "The noise will attract them," Jasper warned, looking back the way they had come. "It cannot be helped. This is the only way to the eastern passages." As the door opened fully, revealing a dark tunnel beyond, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Velixia ushered Kira through, then turned to Jasper. "You are injured." He grimaced, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. "Nothing serious. Let's move." Before they could follow, Kira energy bolt struck the wall beside them. Velixia pushed Jasper through the doorway and turned to face their attackers, drawing her weapon in one fluid motion. "Go," she commanded. "Get Kira to safety." "Not without you," Jasper insisted, drawing his own sidearm. Together, they fired at the advancing mercenaries, forcing them to take cover. But they were outnumbered and outgunned, and Jasper knew they couldn't hold the position long. "The door," he shouted over the weapons fire. "Can it be closed from inside?" Velixia nodded, firing again. "The same mechanism, but we would be sealed in with no guarantee the other exits remain clear." "Better than being shot where we stand," Jasper argued, wincing as an energy bolt grazed his leg. With a reluctant nod, Velixia began backing toward the doorway, maintaining suppressive fire. Jasper covered her, his weapon's charge indicator dropping dangerously low. Once through the doorway, Velixia activated the interior mechanism. The massive stone door began to close too slowly for Jasper's comfort. A mercenary saw what they were doing and rushed forward, trying to reach the opening before it sealed. Jasper fired his remaining charge, striking the man in the chest. He went down, but more were coming. The door continued its inexorable movement, the opening narrowing by the second. An energy bolt slipped through the gap, striking the wall beside Velixia's head. She returned fire with deadly accuracy, dropping another attacker. Then, with a final rumble, the stone door closed completely, sealing them in darkness, broken only by the soft glow of Velixia's bioluminescent patterns. "Mother." Kira's voice came from deeper in the tunnel, frightened but unharmed. "We're coming, little one," Velixia called back, activating a light source from her armor. She turned to Jasper, her silver eyes assessing his wounds. "You need treatment." "Later," he insisted. "How long before they find another way in?" "There are other entrances, but they are well hidden. We have some time." She led the way down the tunnel, supporting Jasper when he stumbled. "The eastern caverns connect to a network that spans half the canyon system. If we can reach the outpost, we will have protection." They found Kira waiting anxiously around a bend in the tunnel. She rushed to her mother, then surprised Jasper by taking his hand as well. "You're hurt," she said, noticing his blood-soaked uniform. "I've had worse," he assured her, though in truth, the shoulder wound was beginning to concern him. The stone had done more damage than he'd initially thought, and blood loss was making him lightheaded. Velixia noticed his deteriorating condition. "We must rest and treat your wounds before continuing." Despite his protests, she led them to a small chamber off the main tunnel, where an underground spring provided fresh water. With practiced efficiency, she helped him remove his combat jacket to examine the injury. "The stone has fragmented inside the wound," she observed. "It must be removed." Jasper nodded, already reaching for his medical kit with his good arm. "I can walk you through the procedure." "That won't be necessary," Velixia said with unexpected gentleness. "My people are not so different from yours in this regard." She cleaned the wound with water from the spring, then carefully extracted the stone fragments, using instruments from Jasper's kit. Her touch was surprisingly gentle for a warrior, her movements precise and confident. "You have medical training," Jasper realized. "All Sylvari of the royal line are taught healing arts," she explained as she worked. "Life and death, creation and destruction, we must understand both to rule justly." Kira watched the procedure with fascination, rather than fear, occasionally handing her mother instruments or supplies as needed. When the fragments were removed, Velixia applied a combination of human antiseptics and a Sylvari healing salve she produced from a pouch at her belt. "This will accelerate tissue regeneration," she told him. "But you must avoid straining the shoulder for at least a day." Jasper nodded gratefully as she bandaged the wound. "Thank you." When the treatment was complete, Velixia insisted they rest before continuing. Kira curled up between them, falling asleep almost immediately, despite the dire circumstances. Watching her, Jasper felt a profound sense of responsibility, not just for this child, but for all the children of both species who deserved a future free from manufactured hatred. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "If your transmission reached both sides, the evidence is out there. But will it be enough?" Velixia's expression was somber in the dim light. "Truth is a powerful weapon, but those who profit from lies will not surrender easily. Blackwood Industries has influence at the highest levels of both our governments. But not complete control," Jasper pointed out. "There are good people on both sides who will act once they know." "Perhaps," she acknowledged. "My contact confirmed the data was received by members of the Reconciliation Initiative, a covert group of Sylvari and humans working together to end the conflict. They have been gathering evidence for months, but lack the definitive proof the Temple archives provided." "The Alliance has similar groups," Jasper told her. "Not everyone bought into the propaganda. Not everyone wanted this war." They fell silent, listening to Kira's soft breathing. After a while, Velixia spoke again, her voice barely audible. 3 years ago, when my consort was killed, I swore I would not rest until every human had paid for his death. I led my forces in battles that resulted in thousands of your people dying." Her luminescent patterns dimmed with what Jasper now recognized as sorrow. "How many were like you? How many questioned the war they were forced to fight? And how many Sylvari died because humans like me didn't question orders sooner?" Jasper countered. "We all bear responsibility. But you risked everything for a child not of your kind," she said, her silver eyes meeting his. "Perhaps there is hope for both our species after all." They rested for several hours before continuing their journey through the caverns. Jasper's shoulder ached, but the Sylvari remedy had indeed accelerated healing, allowing him to move with less pain. Kira, too, showed remarkable recovery, walking on her own for stretches before tiring and allowing Jasper or Velixia to carry her. The underground passages were a maze of natural tunnels and ancient Sylvari construction. Velixia navigated confidently, explaining that these routes had been used by her people for millennia to travel between sacred sites. "Before your corporations came, much of Arrakis 9 was a network of thriving Sylvari settlements," she told Jasper. "This planet has been part of our culture for countless generations. Yet the Alliance claimed it was uninhabited when mining rights were granted." Jasper said, understanding more fully the depth of the deception. Your settlements were deliberately erased from the surveys. And when we protested, we were portrayed as aggressive invaders on a world we had tended for thousands of years. The bitterness in her voice was palpable. Their progress was slow, but steady. Twice they had to hide as Blackwood search teams passed nearby, using different tunnels in the vast network. By Valixia's estimation, they were halfway to the outpost when they encountered the first signs of trouble. A section of tunnel ahead had collapsed, blocking their path. Valixia studied the obstacle with a frown. This is recent damage. From the pattern, it appears to be the result of focused explosives, not natural collapse. They're trying to cut off escape routes, Jasper realized. Is there another way? Yes, but it will take us closer to the surface. She looked troubled. We would be more vulnerable to detection. With no alternative, they backtracked and took a branching tunnel that sloped gradually upward. Eventually, they emerged into a larger cavern, where cracks in the ceiling allowed shafts of sunlight to penetrate. The illumination revealed ancient Silveri murals covering the walls, depictions of the first settlement of Arrakis 9 of Harmony, with the desert environment of meetings with other species. The Hall of Remembrance, Valixia explained, as Kira gazed in wonder at the artwork. Every major event in our history on this world is recorded here. Jasper studied the murals, noting an entire section dedicated to early human Silveri contact. The images showed peaceful exchanges, shared technology, cultural celebrations, a stark contrast to the current state of affairs. What happened? He asked, gesturing to the peaceful scenes. Before Blackwood, our peoples seemed to coexist. The first human explorers respected our claim to this world, Valixia explained. Scientific expeditions, cultural exchanges, there was mutual benefit. But as your expansion continued, valuable resources were discovered. Corporations like Blackwood saw profit where once there had been only scientific interest. Jasper nodded grimly. It was an old story repeated throughout human history, the subjugation of indigenous peoples for economic gain, justified by manufactured narratives of superiority or necessity. They were about to continue when the cavern trembled. Dust and small stones showered from the ceiling as the rumbling grew stronger. Orbital bombardment. Jasper recognized the pattern. Heavy weapons. Valixia's expression darkened. They would destroy ancient sites, rather than allow the truth to spread. The bombardment continued, the impacts drawing closer to their location. Larger pieces of the ceiling began to fall, forcing them to take cover near the walls. We need to move, Jasper urged, as a substantial section of ceiling collapsed in the center of the cavern. This entire system could come down around us. Valixia nodded, but as they headed for the exit tunnel, a massive impact directly overhead brought down a large portion of the cavern. Jasper reacted instinctively, pushing Kira clear of the falling debris. Pain exploded through his consciousness as something struck him from behind, and darkness claimed him. He woke to the sensation of gentle hands examining his injuries, and Kira's frightened voice nearby. Opening his eyes with effort, he found himself lying beneath a protective arch of fallen stone, Valixia kneeling beside him. Do not move, she instructed when she saw he was conscious. Your back is injured. Jasper took stock of his condition. Pain radiated from his lower back, but he could still feel and move his legs. No spinal damage then. How bad? A deep bruise along the spine, possibly cracked vertebrae, she assessed. You were fortunate, the exoframe absorbed much of the impact. Memory returned in a rush. Kira! Here, came the child's voice as she moved into his field of vision. You saved me from the falling rocks. Jasper managed a smile for her benefit. Good, are we trapped? Valixia nodded grimly. The exit is blocked. I have been searching for another way out, but the bombardment has destabilized the entire cavern system. Despite her composed demeanor, Jasper could see the worry in her eyes. They were running out of both options and time. Help me up, he requested. When she hesitated, he added, I can move. We need to find a way out before they send ground forces to confirm the destruction. With reluctance, Valixia supported him as he rose to a sitting position, then to his feet. Pain lanced through his back with every movement, but it was manageable. The exoframe was damaged, but still functional, providing some support. The cavern was in ruins, most of the ancient murals now buried beneath rubble. Only one small section of ceiling remained intact, allowing a shaft of dusty light to illuminate the destruction. The exit tunnel was completely blocked by massive stone slabs that had once been the ceiling. "There," Jasper said, pointing to the shaft of light. "If we can widen that opening." Velixia followed his gaze. It would be exposed directly in view of any orbital surveillance. "Do we have a choice?" After a moment's consideration, she shook her head. "No, but we will need to create a makeshift ladder or climbing assistance. The opening is at least 5 meters above us." Working together, they assembled a precarious structure from the fallen debris, using Jasper's damaged exoframe components to reinforce key joints. Velixia climbed up first to test its stability, widening the opening with her energy weapon until it was large enough for them to pass through. "Clear," she called down after surveying the surface. "No immediate signs of enemy forces, but there is heavy activity to the north near the oasis." Jasper helped Kira climb up next, ignoring the pain that shot through his back with every exertion. When both Silvari were safely on the surface, he began his own ascent, each movement an exercise in controlled agony. Near the top, a section of their makeshift ladder gave way. Jasper lost his grip, falling backward, before Velixia's hand shot out, catching his wrist with inhuman strength. With a grunt of effort, she pulled him up through the opening onto the surface. They found themselves in a narrow section of canyon, the high walls providing some coverage from aerial observation. The bombardment had ceased, but smoke rose from several locations in the distance, marking where the orbital weapons had struck. "The outpost is still 2 days' journey on foot," Velixia said, orienting herself. "But there may be Blackwood forces between us and safety." "And my people?" Jasper asked. "Any sign of regular Alliance troops?" She shook her head. "Not in this sector. They may have withdrawn after the bombardment began." They moved cautiously through the canyon system, keeping to areas of shadow and using the natural terrain for cover. Jasper's injuries slowed their pace considerably, but neither Velixia nor Kira showed impatience with his limitations. As night fell, they found shelter in a shallow cave, barely more than an indentation in the canyon wall, but enough to conceal them from casual observation. Velixia used the last of the Silvari healing salve on Jasper's back, her touch careful but confident. "The data crystal," Jasper asked as she worked. "You said the transmission was successful." "Yes," she confirmed. "My contact in the Reconciliation Initiative confirmed receipt. They were preparing to disseminate it through independent channels on both sides when we lost communication." "Then there's still hope," Jasper said. "If enough people see the evidence, if enough voices demand answers." Velixia's expression was guarded. "Perhaps. But hope has been in short supply these past years." They ate sparingly from their dwindling supplies. Kira, exhausted by the day's ordeal, fell asleep, quickly curled between them for warmth as the desert night brought plummeting temperatures. "She is remarkably resilient," Jasper observed, watching the sleeping child. "Like her mother." Velixia's features softened as she looked at her daughter. "She has known only war in her short life. Yet somehow, she retains the capacity for trust, for seeing beyond differences." Her silver eyes lifted to meet his. "A trait I had lost until recently." "War does that," Jasper said. "Makes us forget what we're capable of, the good as well as the bad." They lapsed into companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. After a while, Velixia spoke again, her voice barely audible. "If we succeed, if this evidence ends the war, what will you do?" The question caught Jasper by surprise. He hadn't allowed himself to think beyond their immediate survival. "I don't know. Return to medicine properly this time, without the uniform." He looked at her curiously. "And you? What does a warrior princess do in peacetime?" A faint smile touched her lips. "Before the war, I was a scholar of xenobiology. I studied other species, their cultures, their physiologies. It was why I was chosen to lead the first diplomatic missions to human colonies. You'd return to that, perhaps. Her gaze drifted to the stars, visible through the canyon opening. Or perhaps there is new work to be done. Healing the rifts between our peoples will require more than just exposing Blackwood's manipulation. Jasper nodded in understanding. Cultural exchange, medical collaboration, rebuilding trust. Yes, Valixia agreed. Work that would benefit from those who have seen both sides of the conflict. The implication hung between them, an invitation, or at least the possibility of one. Jasper found himself unexpectedly moved by the idea of working alongside this remarkable being to build something meaningful from the ashes of war. They alternated watches through the night, alert for any sign of pursuit. Dawn found them already moving, following the canyon as it wound eastward toward the Silveri outpost. Jasper's back had improved enough for steady travel, though each step remained a study in discomfort. By midday, they had reached a vantage point that allowed them to see much of the surrounding terrain. What they observed was deeply troubling Blackwood ships patrolling the canyons in a clear search pattern, and more ominously, a major deployment of forces near what Valixia identified as the location of the outpost. They're laying siege to your people, Jasper realized, trying to contain the information leakage. Valixia's expression hardened as she studied the distant conflict through a scope. Not just Blackwood forces. There are regular Alliance troops as well. Jasper took the scope, confirming her observation with dismay. Standard human Alliance units were indeed participating in the operation, apparently unaware they were serving corporate, rather than official interests. We need to get closer, he decided. Find a way to contact the Alliance commander. If we can show them the evidence directly. A dangerous gamble, Valixia cautioned. If the commander is loyal to Blackwood. It's a risk we have to take, Jasper insisted. Those are my people down there being used as pawns, just as your forces have been. They deserve to know the truth. After consideration, Valixia nodded agreement. There is a hidden approach to the outpost, an ancient tunnel that emerges within the defensive perimeter. If we can reach it, we might be able to contact both sides simultaneously. They altered their course, descending deeper into the canyon system. The terrain grew increasingly difficult, forcing them to climb down steep rock faces and navigate narrow passages. Jasper's injuries protested every movement, but determination kept him going. By late afternoon, they had reached a position overlooking the conflict zone. The Silvari outpost was visible now, a collection of structures built into the canyon wall, their organic architecture providing natural camouflage. Alliance and Blackwood forces had established a perimeter, heavy weapons trained on the outpost entrances. There, Valixia pointed to a nearly invisible fissure in the canyon floor, about 100 meters from their position. That leads to the tunnel system. Jasper studied the approach. It's exposed. We'd be visible crossing that open ground. Wait until dusk, she suggested. The changing light will provide some cover. They settled in to wait, watching as the siege continued below. Periodically, demands for surrender were broadcast toward the outpost, met with silence from the defenders within. Jasper noticed something troubling about the deployment. The regular Alliance troops were positioned at the front, while Blackwood forces maintained the rear and flanks. They're using Alliance soldiers as a shield, he observed grimly. If your people break out, regular troops take the casualties, while Blackwood forces can respond from safety. Valixia's expression darkened with anger. Sacrificing your people to protect their mercenaries. More evidence of their true priorities. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, they prepared to make their move. Jasper checked his sidearm, recharged from Valixia's energy pack, but still woefully inadequate against the forces arrayed below. Kira was given clear instructions to remain hidden if they encountered trouble. Stay low, move in short bursts between cover, Jasper advised, as they descended to the canyon floor. If we're spotted, split up. You two head for the tunnel. I'll draw their attention. Valixia fixed him with an intense gaze. We stay together, she countered firmly. All three of us reach safety, or none do. The unexpected declaration of solidarity left Jasper momentarily speechless. He nodded, unable to find words for the emotion that welled within him. They began their approach as the sun's final rays disappeared behind the canyon rim, plunging the landscape into the brief twilight before true darkness. Moving from rock to boulder, staying in shadows, they made steady progress toward the fissure Velixia had identified. They were halfway there when floodlights suddenly blazed to life around the perimeter, sweeping the terrain in systematic patterns. One passed close to their position, forcing them to freeze behind inadequate cover. "They're increasing security for the night," Jasper whispered. "We need to move faster." The next dash brought them to a shallow depression that offered slightly better concealment. As they crouched there, evaluating the remaining distance, Kira suddenly stiffened. "Mother," she whispered urgently, "I hear something." Velixia tensed her superior Silvari senses, confirming her daughter's warning. "Patrol," she breathed. "Two soldiers approaching from the east." The footsteps grew audible to Jasper, now regular Alliance troops, by the sound of their standard-issue boots on the rocky ground. They were heading directly toward the depression. Velixia moved silently, drawing her weapon. Jasper caught her wrist, shaking his head. "No killing if we can avoid it," he mouthed. She hesitated, then gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. As the footsteps drew nearer, Jasper prepared to spring. The moment the first soldier appeared at the edge of the depression, he launched himself upward, using his combat training to quickly immobilize the surprised man with a nerve hold. Velixia moved simultaneously, disarming the second soldier and pinning him with inhuman speed. "Don't struggle," Jasper told his captive, recognizing the insignia of a regular infantry unit. "We're not your enemy." "Oh, Silvari collaborator." The man spat, though he ceased struggling against the hold that could easily render him unconscious. "Captain Jasper Hayes, Medical Corps." Jasper identified himself. "I need to speak with your commanding officer immediately. We have critical intelligence about this operation." The soldier's expression registered shock at the name. "Hayes, the traitor who abducted a Silvari during the Arrakis siege." "I saved an injured child," Jasper corrected, loosening his hold slightly, "and discovered that this entire war has been engineered by Blackwood Industries for profit. Your commanding officer needs to see the evidence we've gathered." Doubt flickered across the soldier's face. Like many in the Alliance forces, he'd heard rumors about corporate influence in military decisions, whispers of questionable orders that served business interests rather than strategic objectives. "Commander Ellis won't talk to you," he said finally. "Blackwood's Colonel Mercer is running this operation." Jasper exchanged a meaningful look with Velixia. Mercer, the same officer who had ordered him to abandon Kira in the ruins. His presence here was further confirmation of Blackwood's controlling hand. "Then we need to reach the Silvari inside the outpost," Jasper decided. "Can you help us?" The soldier hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. "Why should I believe you?" In answer, Velixia released her captive and retrieved the data crystal. "This contains evidence that Blackwood orchestrated the attacks that began this war, that they've manipulated both sides for profit. Your people are dying for corporate greed, just as mine are." The second soldier, now free, could have raised the alarm, but remained silent, watching the exchange with growing uncertainty. "Jensen," the first soldier addressed his companion. "What's your read?" Jensen studied them for a long moment, his gaze lingering on Kira, who had emerged from hiding to stand protectively near Jasper. "The kid doesn't look like a weapon of mass destruction to me," he said finally. "And command's been acting strange since Blackwood's people took over tactical decisions." After a tense silence, the first soldier nodded decisively. "The patrol route loops around that outcropping." He indicated a formation to their right. "It'll be clear for the next 10 minutes. The fissure you were heading for is monitored, but there's another entrance 50 meters west that's in our blind spot." "Why help us?" Velixia asked, suspicion still evident in her posture. "Because enough of us have died," the soldier replied simply. If there's even a chance this war is based on lies, someone should expose it. Jasper released him, fully extending a hand. Thank you. The soldier clasped his hand briefly. Don't make me regret this. Now go before the next patrol comes through. With renewed urgency, they made their way to the alternative entrance the soldier had indicated. It was narrower than the fissure they'd been aiming for, barely wide enough for an adult to squeeze through, but it led down into darkness that promised access to the tunnel system. Velixia went first, then helped Kira navigate the tight passage. Jasper followed with difficulty, his injured back protesting the awkward movements required. Once inside, the tunnel widened enough for them to move more comfortably, though absolute darkness enveloped them until Velixia activated a light source. The main chamber is half a kilometer ahead, she informed them. We'll find the outpost commander there. They moved as quickly as Jasper's condition allowed, aware that their interaction with the patrol could be discovered at any moment. The tunnel sloped gently upward, eventually opening into a larger cavern, illuminated by the same bioluminescent crystal technology Jasper had seen in the temple. Sylvari defenders spotted them immediately, weapons trained on the unexpected arrivals. Velixia stepped forward, speaking rapidly in their native language. Recognition dawned in their expressions, followed by astonishment as they looked from their princess to the human at her side. One of the defenders approached, bowing deeply to Velixia, before addressing her in the common language. Your Highness, we had reports of your death. How came you here and with a human soldier? Bah. Commander Thelian, Velixia acknowledged him. We bring vital information that may end this conflict. This is Captain Jasper Hayes, who saved Kira's life and helped uncover evidence of Blackwood's manipulation of both our peoples. Thelian regarded Jasper with undisguised suspicion. A human who aids Sylvari, forgive my skepticism, Your Highness. It is warranted. Velixia conceded, but misplaced in this instance. Captain Hayes has risked his life repeatedly to protect my daughter and to help bring the truth to light. After a moment's consideration, Thelian nodded. The communications center is this way. We have been attempting to broadcast the data you transmitted earlier, but Blackwood's forces are jamming all outgoing signals. He led them deeper into the outpost through corridors, carved into the living rock, and reinforced with Sylvari architectural elements. Defenders nodded respectfully to Velixia as they passed, eyeing Jasper with varying degrees of curiosity and hostility. The communications center was a hive of activity, Sylvari technicians working feverishly at equipment that combined their crystalline technology with more conventional electronic systems. A large display showed the positions of the besieging forces, highlighting the perimeter of jamming devices that prevented communication with the outside world. We need to break through that jamming, Jasper said, studying the display. Get the evidence transmitted to both Alliance Command and your High Council simultaneously. We have been trying, Thelian informed him. But Blackwood's technology is specifically designed to counter our communication systems. Jasper considered the problem. What about the Alliance emergency channels? They're designed to cut through jamming. We cannot access those frequencies, one of the technicians responded. But I can, Jasper said, removing his damaged but still functional comm unit. My authorization codes should still work, unless they've been specifically revoked. The technicians exchanged glances, then made space for him at one of the consoles. Working together, they integrated his comm unit with their systems, creating an impromptu hybrid that might be able to pierce the jamming field. Even if we break through, Thelian cautioned, Blackwood will detect the transmission immediately. They'll move to silence us by any means necessary. Then we need a distraction, Velixia decided. Something that will divide their attention and forces. Jasper studied the tactical display again. Here, he pointed to a section of the perimeter where Alliance troops were most heavily concentrated. If we could communicate directly with these units, show them the evidence first. A targeted transmission, one of the technicians suggested. Narrowly focused to reduce the chance of interception. Can you isolate Commander Ellis's command frequency? Jasper asked. The technician nodded. With your access codes, yes. They worked rapidly, preparing the transmission while Velixia and Thelion developed a diversionary plan. Kira remained close to Jasper, watching the proceedings with solemn intensity. "Will your people believe the evidence?" she asked him quietly. Jasper considered the question seriously. "Some will. Enough, I hope. The truth has a power of its own once it's set free." When the preparations were complete, Jasper recorded a brief message explaining the situation and his actions, attaching the data from the temple archives. The transmission was set to broadcast simultaneously to Commander Ellis's unit and to key Silvari outposts beyond the jamming perimeter. "Ready?" Velixia asked, returning from her planning session with Thelion. Jasper nodded. "On your mark." She placed a hand on his shoulder, silver eyes meeting his, with an intensity that conveyed more than words could. "Whatever happens next, know that you have earned the eternal gratitude of the Silvari people, and my personal respect." Before Jasper could respond, she turned to the operations team. "Execute the diversion." At her command, a series of controlled explosions detonated along the canyon rim, farthest from the human forces, not aimed at causing casualties, but creating an impressive display of force that drew attention and resources away from their primary target. As Blackwood forces scrambled to respond to the apparent breakout attempt, Jasper activated the transmission. The communications array hummed with power as it focused its output through the narrow window they had identified in the jamming field. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then confirmation appeared on the screen. The message had been received by Commander Ellis's command unit. Moments later, a second confirmation indicated successful relay to Silvari forces beyond the jamming field. "Now we wait," Thelion said grimly, "and prepare for Blackwood's response." They didn't have to wait long. Less than 10 minutes after the transmission, the pattern of activity among the besieging forces changed dramatically. Alliance units began pulling back from their forward positions, creating space between themselves and Blackwood's mercenaries. Confused communications chatter filtered through their systems as regular troops questioned their orders, and Blackwood commanders attempted to maintain control of the situation. "It's working," Jasper said, hope rising in his chest. "Ellis is withdrawing his forces." "Blackwood will not surrender so easily," Velixia cautioned, watching as the mercenary units began to regroup. "They will—" Her analysis was cut short as the outpost shook violently. Alarms blared throughout the complex. "Orbital bombardment!" Thelion shouted. "They're targeting the entire outpost." "Evacuate all personnel to the lower levels," Velixia ordered. "Activate the shield systems." As Silvari defenders rushed to comply, another impact rocked the complex, sending dust and debris cascading from the ceiling. The tactical display flickered, showing multiple incoming projectiles from Blackwood's ships in orbit. "They're trying to bury the evidence and us with it," Jasper realized. "But they've made a mistake." "What mistake?" Thelion asked, as they hurried toward the emergency shelters deeper in the complex. "The orbital bombardment confirms everything in our transmission," Jasper explained. "Why would they try to destroy an outpost with such force, unless they had something to hide?" Velixia's eyes widened with understanding. "They reveal their guilt with every action." The bombardment continued as they reached the lower levels, where most of the outpost's inhabitants had gathered. Children and non-combatants huddled together, while defenders maintained discipline despite the obvious fear. Jasper noticed one section had been designated as a medical area, where Silvari healers were treating injuries from the initial impacts. Without hesitation, he moved to assist, applying his knowledge of human medicine to complement their techniques. Some of the healers initially rejected his help, but Velixia's authoritative explanation of his role in their escape quickly overcame resistance. As they worked to treat the wounded, the impacts gradually decreased in frequency and intensity. After nearly an hour, they ceased entirely. An uneasy silence fell over the shelters. "Could they have given up?" one of the defenders asked hopefully. "Unlikely," Thelion responded. "More probably they are preparing for a ground assault." Jasper exchanged a glance with Velixia. They both knew what came next, Blackwood would send in forces to ensure no survivors remained to contradict their narrative. "We need to get to the surface," Jasper said. "See what's happening." Leaving the wounded in capable hands, they made their way back to the command center, which had been hastily relocated to a more protected area. The damage to the outpost was extensive, but the ancient Silveri construction had withstood the worst of the bombardment. The tactical displays, now running on emergency power, showed a drastically changed battlefield. Alliance forces had completely withdrawn from their siege positions, forming a perimeter facing Blackwood's mercenaries, rather than the outpost. And most surprisingly, additional Alliance ships had entered the system, their weapons trained not on the outpost, but on Blackwood's orbital platforms. "Your Commander Ellis made his choice," Velixia observed. Before they could fully process this development, a communication request came through on an Alliance emergency frequency. With a nod from Thelion, Jasper accepted the transmission. Commander Ellis's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression a mixture of anger and determination. "Captain Hayes, I presume you can hear me." "Yes, sir," Jasper confirmed. "I'm here with Princess Velixia and the Silveri defenders." Ellis's eyes narrowed at the confirmation. "The data you transmitted has been verified by our intelligence division. Blackwood's manipulation of this conflict appears to be substantiated." His jaw tightened. "I have ordered all Alliance forces to stand down from operations against Silvari targets and to contain Blackwood personnel." Relief washed through Jasper. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Hayes. Blackwood still controls significant military assets, and they're not surrendering. We're in a Mexican standoff up here that could go hot any minute." Ellis leaned closer to the camera. "I need to speak with the Silveri leadership. Can you arrange that?" Velixia stepped forward. "I am Princess Velixia of the Silvari Conclave, acting commander of this outpost." Ellis straightened, obviously recognizing the significance of her presence. "Your Highness, I propose an immediate cessation of hostilities between our forces and coordination to neutralize Blackwood's military capabilities." "Agreed," Velixia responded without hesitation. "We have already transmitted the evidence to our High Council. They are recalling all forces from engagement with human targets." As they spoke, a new alert appeared on the tactical display. Blackwood ships were powering weapon systems, preparing to fire on Alliance vessels. "We're out of time," Ellis said grimly. "Blackwood's going for broke. Take cover, this could get messy." The transmission cut off as the first exchanges of orbital fire began. The outpost trembled again, but this time not from direct bombardment, the shockwaves of capital ships engaging in close-quarters combat above the planet. "We should return to the shelters," Thelion advised. "This battle is beyond our control now." Jasper nodded agreement, but as they turned to leave, another communication request came through, this one on a Silvari frequency. Velixia accepted it immediately. A Silvari face appeared bearing the distinctive markings of High Council authority. "Princess Velixia, we received your transmission. The evidence has been presented to the full council and verified. All Silvari forces have been ordered to cease hostilities against humans and to engage Blackwood assets only." "The Alliance commander has issued similar orders," Velixia informed him. "Coordination is underway." The council member's expression showed cautious optimism. "Then perhaps this day will see the beginning of peace, rather than another escalation of war." His gaze shifted to Jasper. "Is this the human who assisted you?" "Captain Jasper Hayes," Velixia confirmed. "Without his courage and compassion, none of this would have been possible." The council member studied Jasper thoughtfully. "The Conclave owes you a debt, Captain Hayes. When this crisis has passed, we would welcome you as an honored guest." Jasper inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Counselor. I look forward to visiting under more peaceful circumstances." The transmission ended as another shockwave rocked the outpost. Thelion insisted they return to the shelters, where they joined Kira and the others in tense waiting. Hours passed as the battle raged overhead, occasional updates filtering through to the command staff. By dawn, it was over. Blackwood's forces, caught between coordinated Alliance and Sylvari attacks, had been decisively defeated. Victor Blackwood himself, attempting to flee the system in a private vessel, had been captured by Alliance forces. Most importantly, the company's internal communications had been seized, providing even more damning evidence of their role in engineering and perpetuating the conflict. When they finally emerged from the outpost, the sky above Arrakis 9 was clear of war vessels for the first time in years. Instead, diplomatic ships from both the Human Alliance and the Sylvari Conclave had entered orbit, their representatives already beginning the complex process of building peace from the ashes of manufactured hatred. Jasper stood at the entrance to the outpost watching as Alliance medical teams arrived to assist with the wounded. Commander Ellis appeared personally striding through the dust toward them, with a mix of authority and uncertainty, appropriate for the unprecedented situation. "Captain Hayes," he acknowledged with a nod. "Princess Valixia, the Alliance Council sends its profound apologies for the deception that led to this conflict. There will be thorough investigations, accountability for those involved." "As there should be," Valixia responded evenly. "But today, let us focus on healing rather than retribution." Ellis nodded agreement. "Blackwood Industries has been placed under military control pending full investigation. Their assets are being frozen, their weaponry decommissioned." "And their leadership?" Jasper asked. "Victor Blackwood and his executive team are in custody, facing charges of war crimes, fraud, and treason." Ellis's expression was grim with satisfaction. "They'll answer for every death they caused for profit." In the days that followed, the true extent of Blackwood's manipulation became clear as more evidence was uncovered. The corporation had systematically orchestrated incidents, falsified intelligence, and bribed officials on both sides to maintain a conflict that had generated trillions in revenue from military contracts. The revelation shocked both societies, but also created an opportunity for reconciliation based on their shared victimhood. The first joint Human-Sylvari Commission was established to oversee demilitarization and to develop protocols for future cooperation. 1 month after the fateful day in the temple, Jasper found himself standing in a ceremonial hall within the Sylvari High Conclave, the first human to be formally honored by their leadership. The charges of treason against him had been dropped. Instead, he had been offered amnesty and a position as medical liaison to the Sylvari. As he accepted the crystalline Medal of Honor, his gaze found Valixia among the assembled dignitaries. She had exchanged her battle armor for the formal regalia of her royal position, but her presence remained just as commanding. Beside her stood Kira, fully recovered and watching the proceedings with bright-eyed interest. When the ceremony concluded, Valixia approached him. "The medal suits you," she observed, "though I suspect you're uncomfortable with the attention." Jasper smiled wryly. "Doctors prefer to work behind the scenes, but I understand the symbolism is important right now." "Indeed. Our peoples need heroes of peace as much as they once glorified heroes of war." She gestured to a private alcove away from the crowds. "May we speak?" Once they were alone, her formal demeanor softened slightly. "The High Council has approved my proposal for a joint medical research initiative. Sylvari healing techniques, combined with human medical technology." "That's excellent news," Jasper said sincerely. "There's so much both sides can learn from each other." "I had hoped," Valixia continued, a hint of uncertainty entering her voice, "that you might consider directing the human component of the project. Your unique experience with both physiologies would be invaluable." The offer took Jasper by surprise, though perhaps it shouldn't have. The past weeks had seen them working closely together on various reconciliation initiatives, their unusual partnership becoming a symbol of the new cooperation between their species. "I would be honored," he replied. "Though I should warn you, I've developed a reputation for disregarding protocols when I believe they're wrong." A rare smile touched Valixia's lips. "I am counting on that quality, Captain Hayes. The path to true peace will require those willing to challenge established thinking on both sides." From the doorway, Kira called out to them, eager to show Jasper something, she had created an artwork depicting their journey from the battlefield to the temple, rendered in the luminescent crystalline style of her people. As he admired the child's work, Jasper reflected on how a single act of compassion in the midst of war had cascaded into changes beyond imagining. The road ahead would not be easy. Centuries of mistrust could not be erased overnight, and powerful interests would resist the new order. But looking at Kira, at the future she represented, he knew the effort was worth any cost. "I have something for you," Velixia said, later, as they watched Kira playing with other children, human and Sylvari alike, in the conclave gardens. She handed him a small crystal, similar to the one that had contained the evidence from the temple. "What is it?" he asked, turning it in his hand. "A memory crystal. I have recorded the true history of our journey from your act of mercy on the battlefield to the peace that followed, so that neither of our peoples will forget how this began with compassion that transcended hatred." Jasper closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its subtle warmth against his palm. "Thank you. Though I hope our future together will create even better memories to record." Velixia's silver eyes met his, a depth of understanding passing between them that needed no translation. "As do I, Jasper Hayes. As do I." In the garden below, human and Sylvari children played together in the shadow of the ancient conclave buildings, a sight that would have been unimaginable months earlier. Among them, Kira moved with the natural diplomacy of her mother, bridging cultural gaps with the ease of the truly innocent. It was, Jasper thought, watching the scene with Velixia beside him, a promising beginning to a story that would continue long after their own roles in it had ended. A story that began with a simple choice on a battlefield to see an enemy not as a faceless other, but as a child deserving of life and protection. And in that choice perhaps lay the true path to lasting peace.